Hello and welcome to People Living with HIV/AIDS WA. PLWHA offer resources, advocacy and support. Remember, you are not alone, you are loved, you are enough. And don't give up, be your own hero. People Living with HIV/AIDS WA website is plwha.org and follow us at PLWHA WA on x.com.
We can all be heroes in our own way, supporting each other without fear.
We're here at the People Living with HIV/AIDS WA website, and we're going to be looking at an article entitled "It's Time for a Patient Bill of Rights." A patient bill of rights advocating for statutory protection in Western Australia healthcare, empowering patients with enforceable rights and reparations. At People Living with HIV/AIDS WA, PLWHA WA, we advocate for a comprehensive patient bill of rights in Western Australia, a statutory framework that ensures every individual receives compassionate, fair and accountable healthcare. This bill would enshrine informed consent, protection from discrimination and the right to reparations for harm, transforming voluntary complaints into binding, enforceable processes. Below, we outline the pressing need for this reform, the shortcomings of the current system, and why a statutory body is essential for true justice. The problem: voluntary complaints and systemic failures. In Western Australia, patients facing medical errors, negligence or discrimination rely on voluntary complaints mechanisms, such as those overseen by health service providers or the Health and Disability Service Complaints Office, HADSCO, and the Health Consumers Council of Western Australia at hconswa on x.com. While intended to resolve issues amicably, these systems fall short in several critical ways. Non-binding outcomes. Resolutions are often informal agreements without legal force. Providers can disregard recommendations, leading to repeated harm and no real accountability. Lack of enforcement and record keeping. Without mandatory reporting or binding enforcement, outcomes depend on goodwill. If agreements aren't documented or upheld, patients have no recourse and systemic issues go unaddressed. Bias from long-term relationships. Complaints handlers may develop ongoing relationships with healthcare providers, prioritising these over patient interests. This can result in minimised resolutions aimed at protecting reputations rather than delivering justice, effectively making problems go away without meaningful change. Discrimination and vulnerable groups. For people living with HIV/AIDS and other marginalised communities, discrimination exacerbates harm. Voluntary systems rarely address underlying biases, leaving patients to endure ongoing mistreatment without protection. Why a statutory patient bill of rights is needed. A patient bill of rights, backed by law, would create an independent statutory body with the authority to intervene decisively, ensuring patient safety and equity. Key features include immediate intervention. Upon receiving a complaint, the body could step in promptly to halt bullying, mistreatment or negligence, preserving evidence and protecting vulnerable patients from further harm. Binding enforcement and reparations. Outcomes would be legally enforceable, with mandatory reparations for harm, financial, emotional or otherwise. Justice without reparations is not justice. This ensures patients aren't left to bear the long-term consequences alone. Independence and transparency. Free from provider influence, the body would prioritise patient rights, with public reporting to drive systemic improvements and prevent recurrence. Evidence protection. Unlike voluntary processes that may favour providers in collecting evidence, A statutory system would secure all relevant data early, empowering patients in any legal follow-up and reducing barriers to justice. Accessibility for all. Simplified, cost-free processes would make it easier for patients to seek redress without the prohibitive expense and complexity of the legal system. This reform is crucial for people living with HIV/AIDS and bloodborne viruses, who often face stigma and barriers in healthcare. By embedding human rights into law, we can foster a system where errors are met with accountability and patients are treated with dignity. Call to action. People living with HIV/AIDS WA calls on the Western Australian Government to enact a statutory patient Bill of Rights. Join us in advocating for a healthcare system grounded in compassion, transparency and true justice. Contact your representatives, share your stories and support our efforts to protect patient rights.
I had such bad service, I stopped using them! Wow, I'll stop too!
People living with HIV/AIDS WA advocating for enforceable rights and reparations in WA healthcare. As chairperson of People living with HIV/AIDS WA, I support this policy because for about 20 years I have had the experience of advocating for both myself and for members at organisations like the Health Consumers Council and also the AIDS Council. I've seen how these voluntary mechanisms have failed people from the lack of outcomes being documented, and so there's the I didn't promise that, and then there's the fact that the healthcare provider can just flick their nose at the outcomes, and so often these voluntary complaints mechanisms seem to be about protecting the professional reputations of the healthcare provider, and they become a humiliation ritual in which the patient gets further abused. And this can lead to long-term trauma and conditions such as PTSD. People don't want to go to get medical care after these kinds of negative experiences, thus contributing to a loss of faith in the medical system. For more information about our resources and advocacy, come to the PLWHA WA website. The address is on the screen. It's plwhawa.org.
The difference between HIV negative and HIV positive can only be a test. Get tested.
We appreciate everyone who watches our videos. Please like, share and subscribe. We're a grassroots organisation. We don't get paid for these videos. We're not government funded, so sharing is caring. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Remember, if you don't get HIV, you won't have to deal with the AIDS Council.